This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 99, entitled Political Phases of MGTOW/Masculism. Description: this flyer lists 5 political phases or stages that the MGTOW/Masculism movements will probably have to go through for men's lib issues to be resolved. Flyer itself. Political phases of MGTOW/Masculism. This flyer discusses the political phases or stages that the MGTOW/Masculist movements will probably go through before men's lib issues are resolved. I list them here and give them labels, then elaborate on them a bit later. Phase 0. Gynocentrification. Phase 1. Rise of MGTOW/Masculism. Phase 2. Female backlash. Phase 3. Media mainstream. Phase 4. Political solutions. Phase 0. Gynocentrification. The primary reason for the exponential rise in the number of men choosing to be MGTOW/Masculist is the fluffy feminist takeover of the divorce courts, which are now financially massacring men on a daily basis. Roughly 1 married father in 4 will be massacred this way, losing his kids, his house, paying child support and alimony to his fluffy ex-wife, who continues to parasite on him after the divorce as she did before the divorce. This massive injustice against men has resulted in 70% of young men under 35 in the US and Japan refusing to marry and refusing to have kids, thus crashing the birth rate that will wipe out the US-Japanese population in less than a century, unless Phase 4 is successful, and soon. Many intelligent men have become MGTOWs, and thanks to the internet and YouTube are looking carefully into what has happened to them and what has happened to women that has enabled the divorce laws to have been made so massively men unfair. Phase 1. Rise of MGTOW/Masculism. As a result of Phase 0, men are now waking up in droves, becoming conscious that marriage is toxic for them because divorce is toxic. The odds of 1 in 4 of being financially massacred as a married father are way too high, and so men are making a rational decision simply not to marry, not to have kids, and spend their money on themselves, doing what they love. They have developed new lifestyles. For example, tway-tweffing, where a FIP, financially independent person, man, has a relationship with a FIP woman, with both having their own apartment. This way the man gets the regular sex that he needs and can walk away so easily if the woman shows her true nature, nagging, withholding sex, trying to mould him, etc. Many MGTOWs live frugally, earning and saving hard so that they can retire early in their lives and then arc, that's after retirement careering, in their 40s, doing what they love. Many work part-time and spend the rest of their time doing what they love. It has been calculated, given the growth rate of MGTOW/Masculist ideas, that by 2018 these ideas will be known to everyone, the way feminist ideas are today. The number of MGTOW/Masculists is growing exponentially, so it's only a question of time before everyone has heard of them or knows one in their own lives. Phase 2. Female backlash. With millions of men refusing to marry and have kids, women are being put into a panic. Things have advanced furthest in Japan, where now 70% of young Japanese men under 35 refuse to date, or even sex women, let alone marrying them and having kids with them. Japan even has a minister of population, whose task is to try to persuade Japanese men to be fathers, with little success. So women are really starting to panic, especially the fluffies, who rely on being able to parasite off a man's money so that her manslave pays for the middle-class house that she wants to raise her kids in, and have him pay for it all. The rise of MGTOW/Masculism is forcing fluffies to get off their parasitic asses and become FIPs. Otherwise they won't be able even to tway-tweff. They will instead be left rotting on the shelf, utterly rejected and ignored by men who refuse to even sex them, the ultimate insult coming from men. Young women are seeing the writing on the wall and are learning about MGTOW/masculism, so are adapting. They see the hatred of men towards misandrous, man-dumping, feminazi bitches, and how these feminazis lead manless, loveless, sexless, childless, and often poor lives, and are increasingly expressing publicly that I'm no feminist as a form of damage control, but it's too late. Men will continue to refuse to marry and have kids while the divorce courts are still toxic to men, and while the gender laws are so biased in favour of women. For example, no para, paternity rejection right, etc. As more and more women go manless, the panic level of women will rise and rise. Men will hit back with masculist/MGTOW rhetoric, so that women become very conscious that men are very angry and have the power to wipe out fluffies. Nearly all men are fips, so if they refuse to be man-slaves, that will force fluffies to be fips, or they rot on the shelf to extinction. Women will start becoming female masculists, pushing for men's lib, so as to men-fair the gender laws. Until the gender laws are made men-fair, women will continue to be ignored. Smart women can see this and will join with the politically minded masculists to get the gender laws changed. In other words, men-faired. Verb. Phase 3. Media mainstream. Once everyone has heard of the main ideas of MGTOW/masculism, sooner or later the broadcast media will latch on to the movement, giving it big-time publicity. They have to, because if millions of men continue to refuse fatherhood, whole populations get wiped out. There is nothing more important than the population crash, in capitals. So, the media will be studying the MGTOW/masculist videos, essays, books, etc. They will transmit the main ideas of MGTOW masculism to everyone across the planet. There will be debates on TV between feminists and masculists, between talk show hosts and the most articulate of the MGTOW/masculists, so that people become alarmed that if something drastic is not done soon, then the whole population gets wiped out. Millions of people, men and women, will be screaming, "Help! Do something!" Phase 4. As the social intellectual pressure builds and builds, sooner or later the gender politicians will be forced to get into the act. The longer they twiddle their thumbs, the more vociferously the public will accuse them of being genocidal criminals, because ultimately they are responsible for this mess, this population crash, this MGTOW/masculist marriage and paternity strike. Actually, I'm deeply suspicious that the ultimate culprits are the Jewish banksters who bribed the gender politicians to pass men-unfair divorce laws to cause men and women to be at each other's throats, thus further distracting attention away from their theft of people's taxes, with the Jewish bankster-owned central banks and their paper currency debt note Ponzi schemes. In close brackets. With millions of single women screaming to get a man, with millions of MGTOW/masculists quite happy to not be manslaves and arguing the world is already overcrowded, with millions of MGTOW/masculists screaming for men-fair gender laws, fair divorce laws, passing the para, etc., with the media pushing hard for the gender politicians to get off their bribed, immoral, corrupted asses, then sooner or later the political pressure on them will be so great they will have no choice. They will have to men-fair the gender laws. A great wave of social reform and attitude change will sweep across the earth. Girls will study FIP majors, e.g. STEM majors, STEM, science, tech, engineering and math, and the professions, at high school and college. Fluffy crappers who don't study FIP majors will come under enormous moral pressure and won't be able to find a boyfriend. Men won't even fuck them if they get the label fluffy, which will be the kiss of death to their futures. The current genocentric culture will be wiped out. Everyone will see what it has led to, namely the mass strike of men against paternity, thus wiping out the population. Women will be spat at who express genocentric attitudes and will be severely punished by men in being forced to rot on the shelf and shunned by everyone. Once men get their men-fair gender laws, they will be able to keep their kids after a divorce. They will keep their house. There will be no alimony. Women will come under enormous moral pressure to be FIPs, or they do not deserve to have a man, and they won't have one. The para will be passed, so that men are not tricked into fatherhood by deceitful, criminal women who want babies. How long will it take for these 5 phases to complete? Probably a few decades. I think we are entering phase 2 now, judging by the number of women who are openly expressing that they're not feminists, even though underneath they are, and most are still fluffies. The MGTOW/Masculist leaders have still not caught the attention of the broadcast media, so phase 3 hasn't even started yet. However, I expect that will be well launched within 5 years. I wrote this 1-2 years earlier than I'm speaking now. It is starting to get on mainstream, the broadcast media, but ironically by women. Major film, The Red Pill, major book, The Men on Strike by a woman, and so on. Interesting, but it's starting at least. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name, De Garis Masculist MGTOW Flyers. Ciao.